Hi guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro RPG. And at the end of another poll, we have a resounding win for the West End Games sourcebook for the Star Wars role-playing game, Dark Force Rising. Now, it's the second of the Timothy Zahn novels, or a sourcebook covering those. I've already covered the Heir to the Empire book, so this will be carrying on through, and we'll put the last command in the poll at some point in the future. But I'd just like to mention, before I go over to the desktop, that there's more content of me at the end of the video where I talk over the poll a bit more and where I talk over any other channel related news. But that's at the end, so we can go over to the desktop now. So this is the Dark Force Rising sourcebook by West End Games for the Star Wars role-playing game, fairly obviously. Now it's set during the Star Wars New Republic era, which was how they differentiated these source books from the ones set during the classic trilogy, because obviously West End Games was only publishing books before the prequels came out. They lost the Star Wars license a couple of years before the prequels had been released, so they never even managed to release something for The Phantom Menace. Now, this is a guide to Volume 2 of Timothy Zahn's 3-book cycle, which we now know as the Thrawn trilogy. But at that point, the books were so new that they hadn't really been given an overarching name. They were just the relaunch of Star Wars. So, let's have a look at the back cover. Dark Force Rising Sourcebook by Bill Slavicsek. I rule the Empire now, not some long-dead emperor. Grand Admiral Thrawn's plan to restore the Empire on absolute power proceeds with horrifying efficiency. Only the bravery and skill of Princess Leia, Han Solo and Luke Skywalker can stop him from delivering a killing stroke to the New Republic. While Thrawn's schemes unfold, Luke Skywalker confronts the mad Dark Jedi, Joruus C'baoth, in a struggle for the fate of the Jedi Knights and the galaxy itself. Return to the wonder and excitement of a far-off galaxy in this companion volume to Timothy Zahn's best-selling novel, Dark Force Rising. This book includes complete information and game statistics on all of the characters, aliens, vehicles, droids, planets, and starships from the gripping adventure. This is the calm before the storm. Now, the novel itself is based around a search for the Dark Force, which was a fleet of Old Republic starships which had gone missing. They'd set them up to require less crew than most starships by putting on slave rigging, I think it's called, where one starship basically would control all the others. But people had been infected with a virus, a hive virus, I believe it was called, and the leaders of the fleet took it off into hyperspace and it was never seen again, or at least not until pirates found it and started scavenging it. Now, Thrawn hears about that and wants to buy the location of the fleet to bolster his ships with it. Now, these are older vessels. These are old Republic dreadnoughts, but they're still capital ships, so he's interested in them. Now, the problem with what it says on the back of the book there, that it covers all of the characters from the novels, is the problem which crops up again and again in West End Games Star Wars sourcebooks, that we're going to see a lot of stuff that we have seen in every book, because we're going to get the heroes once again. We're going to get stats for Han Solo, Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker. We're going to get Star Destroyers, TIE Fighters. But there is a lot of new stuff in this. So we pick up with an opening scroll, which starts off introducing the fact that the last book finished with the Battle of the Sluisvan shipyards. So the New Republic is losing its ability to build capital ships. The artwork is fantastic. I really did like the style, even though some characters are a bit deformed. But the artwork I really, really liked at this time. West End Games really did have a style to their publishing. They produced various style guides, which fans of the D6 system use to this day to create fan-based books which look in the same style as these. We've got an introduction, the Dark Force Rising, and the source book, a prologue giving us the state of the galaxy as the novel starts, status on the New Republic, and then we're on to characters. So we've got General Crix Medine, who is one of my favourite characters from the movies, because he's an ex-Imperial officer who is an intelligence agent. Well, we got Admiral Drayson, Captain Virgilio, and all their stats. Who else? Anybody else that I recognise? Winter, who features in some of the books. She was Princess Leia's companion on Alderaan and becomes like a secret agent. And we've got a lovely picture here of the Dreadnought-class vessels, which comprise the Dark Fleet, with the Old Republic logo, or at least what people had designed at that time. And I really do like the design of these ships. They look very Star Wars, they look very brutal, and they look a bit more basic than Star Destroyers. It's just a good design for what they're supposed to be. We've got Winter's stats, Mon Mothma, Admiral Akbar. Obviously, we've seen these many times before. Borsk Leia, the Bothan, the head of the Bothans. Many Bothans died to bring us this information. Well, he was in charge of the Bothans and has manipulated that into political power. Now, these are the Bothans. They're a bit sort of dog-like, although not Wookiee-like. And we've got Princess Leia. Han Solo. Stats again. They're minorly modified if he does anything extra in the book. They maybe boost his skills by a pip or so here and there. But by this point, his skills are getting ridiculously high. Heavy Blaster Pistol, 10D plus 1. Streetwise, Jabba Hutt's organization, 10D plus 1. Why does Han know that much information about them? Space Transport Repair, YT-1300 Transports, 9D plus 2. He should be fantastic at repairing the ships. Why does the Millennium Falcon break down at all? Then we're on to the Force section. So we've got Luke's stats here. He's getting up to Force skills of 13 dice. He's getting up to Vader levels. Got Joruus C'baoth there. Talking about how he's a clone, because we've got the W in the name. So when they cloned Luke in the final novel, he becomes Luke with 2 U's in his name. I don't know what you do if your name doesn't have a U in it and you're cloned, but at this point in time, you added a W. We've got some Jedi powers here. Combat sense, far-seeing, control another's pain. Now, these are published elsewhere, but they crop up in this book, so they're printed here, which just really bulks out the page size. You're not getting new stuff. But if you don't have the source books those are in, I suppose this is at least the place you can find everything from those books. Telekinetic kill, dim another senses. Then we're on to the remnants of the Empire. And we've got the various characters. These are people I've not heard of outside the novel. Captain Brandi, Captain Dorja. We've got naval personnel, standard Imperial pilots. Now these are fleshed out a bit from the very basic stats in the core rulebooks, but we've kind of seen all these before. Standard army troopers. And then we've got Grand Admiral Thrawn himself, with his alien species 11D plus 1, art 12D, very, very high skills, but he is supposed to be an absolute expert. So we've got tactics fleet 12 dice plus 1. We should have perception 1's command 12 dice plus 1. Command Imperial Navy officers 13 dice. He is supposed to be an absolutely brilliant character at commanding and coming up with tactics. We've got Captain Palion, who becomes quite a major character in later books. And then we're on to the Fringe. We've got Niles Ferrier, who is a ship thief, I believe. Gambel Iblis, a member of the rebellion who went off in his own faction. So something which we've now seen much later with other characters. Peregrine's Nest, his base, with the diagram of how it's laid out. What else we got here? Various minor characters. Then we've got Lando's stats. We've got Talon Card, who becomes very important later on. And Mara Jade, who in the novels ends up marrying Luke Skywalker. And I believe they have children very late on. At this point, she's very, very basic. She's got 4 skills of Control 2 dice, Sense 2 dice plus 2, and Alter 1 dice plus 1. Then we've got planets, so the various places they visit. Laying out Honager, the homeworld of the Nogri Death Commandos. Jomark. Pantolomin. The Coral Vanda. Rishi. We're on to alien species. Now, if this book has one flaw apart from repeating the same stats over and over again, I think it's in the alien section here. Because these characters are, or these species are a bit overpowered in comparison to the others. So, in the core rulebooks, the most powerful species you've got are the Wookiees with a 6 dice strength, which is kind of ridiculous because it does allow them basically to ignore blasters. A standard heavy blaster pistol or blaster rifle does 5 dice damage. They've got a strength of 6 dice. They're pretty much going to shrug off all the effects, especially going under the 2nd edition revised and expanded rules, where the stun effect can be totally resisted. But we've got Barabels here, who can only go up to 5 dice strength, but they've got natural body armor. So they get plus 2 dice against physical attacks and plus 1 dice against energy attacks, and 2 dice against resisting radiation, as well as infrared sight. What else we got here? The Defel, who gain an extra 3 dice to stealth. They've got a blind fighting skill, which they can gain, but they are light blind, so they can get a disadvantage if they lose their visor and can't see properly. We've got the Duinoguans. I have no idea how to pronounce that. It's just a selection of letters to me. But they have 18 dice by default. So you can see the other species have 12 dice, but the space dragons, here star dragons, have 18 dice. So a player character one can have immensely high stats. They get space speed. They get 4 skills by default. These are one of only 2 species I ban outright from my games. I don't allow people to be Nogri. I don't let people be Star Dragons. And I have to admit, I probably don't let people be Hutts either, because it's just too much of a pain. And we've got Ewoks. Well, they're fairly standard. Gotals. The Halurgic. They're nothing particularly special. Their strength is 5 dice and they get 1 dice armor, which is quite nice to them, but it gives no bonus against energy weapons. We've got the Nogri, who start off with 16 dice, and they get claws, which do a dice damage, an extra 2 dice to stealth, extra 2 dice to search. They don't get to start with any knowledge skills except for intimidation, survival, or willpower. But is that going to be a massive problem? Because if you're going to be a Nogri, you're going to be incredibly powerful. A strength of 5 dice plus 2 at maximum. Dexterity of 5 dice plus 2. So they've got an immensely high dexterity skill to be able to hit things, very high strength skill to resist things. Even their perception at 4 dice plus 2 is ridiculously high. So your Nogri are going to get to generally go first in combat, hit more often, be able to dodge more often, and be able to resist damage more often. Nogri are silly. They're kind of fun, but they're kind of silly in these rules. The Sluisi, which I kind of like. I think their technical aptitude, where they get an extra 4 dice to put into skills at start of play, but anything they try and repair takes twice as long. I think that's quite well balanced. Compared to, here we've got the Verpine. The Verpine get body armor of 1 dice, microscopic sight, which gives them a bonus 1 dice to search skill when looking for small details, organic telecommunication, but a technical bonus. All Verpine receive a 2 dice bonus when using their technical skills. So they start off with a 5 dice technical, or they can get up to a 5 dice technical. Why would you take anything less if you're going to play a technician Verpine? So every technical skill, basically, they've got at 7 dice at start of play. That is ridiculously powerful. That's getting up to best on a planet, I think this rules say. So I have big problems with the aliens section in this book. These characters are way too powerful, some of them. Balance was out of the window when these characters or alien species were getting made up. Then we're on to droids. Well, we've got decontamination droids, we've got espionage droids, guard droids, interrogator droids, general purpose droids. These are all fairly standard. We see similar things in the rulebooks: medical droids, probe droids, servant droids. There's nothing particularly special in here, but it's nice to have. We've got equipment, so it goes through holo air transmissions and holocomms. Combat artillery, so we've got anti-infantry artillery, anti-orbit artillery. Although I do think that the Planet Defender ion cannon's a bit overly powerful, considering the crew of it get a bonus 5d to hit a target, and then it's doing 12 dice ionization damage. So they get a massive bonus to hit targets, and then they're doing absolutely colossal damage against ships, because ionization damage goes straight through the shields, of course. But we've got other anti-vehicle artillery. We've got different types of shields, which goes into details of, which is very, very nice. Vibro weapons. We're onto vehicles, so we've got free runners, hover scouts, and nice illustrations of them, so we can see what a free runner is, what a hover scout is, transport skiff, and the various types of walkers, which introduces for the first time the ATPT. So we obviously saw the scout walkers and AT-ATs in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, but this introduces a smaller one, which was used by the Old Republic. And we've seen similar in the Clone Wars series, but this was the first look at a miniature one. Basically a way of powering a character up in a Star Wars fashion to make them more effective. I realistically think of this as the Star Wars version of powered armor. So it's a small one-man vehicle which gives them heavy weapons and heavy armor. But carrying on through, we've got skiffs, swoops. I'm never been keen on swoops having their own skill of swoop operation. It would have been far better if they just used repulsor lift operation. But, you know, why does a speeder bike and a swoop require totally different skills, but a speeder bike and a land speeder and an air speeder, like a twin pod cloud car or the snow speeders, all require the same skill, but swoops are a completely different skill. A bit silly. Got the AT-ATs, nice layout of how the inside of them's set up, scout walkers, and then the ATPT itself, along with its stats. So it comes with a twin blaster cannon and a concussion grenade launcher. Very nice. We go on to the starship section. So we've got A-wing fighters here, which we've got in multiple source books. There was no real need for reprinting them, but it does introduce the Scimitar assault bombers, which I really love the side view of. I think they're a bit ugly looking from the front, and the top doesn't look great, but from the side they look like a really sleek Imperial bomber. The idea that the cockpit can launch separately, so it's survivable, all these elements here drop bombs, really, really nice design. I do like those a lot. They were a particular favourite of mine in the editions. Got the standard stats for TIE fighters, which are in the rulebook, TIE interceptors, Y-wing starfighters. Why we're getting these over and over again when they are in the core rulebook, I don't know. We've got Z95s, then we've got some larger transport vessels, space barges, YT-1300s and the Millennium Falcon, again, bulk freighters, the personal yachts, so the Lady Luck, which Lando Calrissian uses. Then we're on to dropships, bulk cruisers, Corellian gunships, which were based on some early design art for the Corellian corvette out of the original Star Wars film. We've got the stats for the Dreadnought, Lancer-class frigates, which I believe are still canon to this day, but this is pretty much where they were introduced. System patrol craft, star galleons, and then we've got the Victory-class Star Destroyer. We don't actually have any stats for the Imperial class. And then we get onto an advert for the second edition. Well, obviously these are for the second edition of the rules. It had come out between the Heir to the Empire book and the Dark Force Rising book, so this had gone over to second edition rules. I don't believe it was ever published for first edition. The easy way to see is the space speed of the ships, because in first edition it was listed in a number of dice they would roll and add to the pilot's skill if they were trying to escape somebody. In second edition it was just as flat speed that they did. And we have an advert for The River of God for Shatterzone, a game I intend to pick up at some point if I see it cheap enough on eBay. But that is the Dark Force Rising Sourcebook. It's got a lot of really nice stuff in it. It was a very solid addition to the Star Wars books, but does suffer from having the same stats again and again. And as I said, I think the alien section is heavily overpowered. There's a lot of the species in there which just are a bit too powerful without enough penalties. I don't mind a species being extremely powerful as long as there's something to make up. For example, if you're playing a Wookiee, you're getting a 6 dice strength, you're getting 1 dice claws, so you can do massive amounts of damage in hand-to-hand combat. But your honor stops you using the claws, so you can very rarely use that bonus. Plus, you can't speak in the standard language, so your character is limited to just being a beast. And I think that's a good restriction for a character, which none of these other species really have. They can do everything a human can do, but they get massive bonuses on top of that. Bit flawed. I would have liked to see more disadvantages added to them. So that was Dark Force Rising for the Star Wars role-playing game by West End Games. And that won the poll this week. So at the other end of the poll, we've got the loser, which this time is Cloud Captains of Mars for Space 1889 by Games Designers Workshop. Now that's kind of surprising because GDW content usually does pretty well in the polls. But that goes through to the next winner of the losers poll, and we'll get one final chance to get a video made on it. So we'll see how it does there. But we've got 2 spaces left in the poll because Bangkok City Spool of the Orient, also by GDW, has survived. Denver City of Shadows for the Shadowrun role-playing game by Faza has survived. And Mark Miller's Traveller by Imperium Games has survived. So with the 2 spaces, we're adding D6 spaceships for the D6 space role-playing game, not from the earlier version of West End Games, but by the resurrected version in the 2000s, when they were doing a lot less licensed products and doing a lot more generic. So they did D6 Fantasy, D6 Adventure, D6 Space. They didn't release a lot of source books, but this was one of the few. I think they did a Creatures one, they did a Book of Adventures, and they did this for D6 Space. So not a lot of content for that game. And there's also the Arms and Equipment Guide for Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition. Now, I realised the other week when I was covering the CD-ROM core rules for 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons that this was mentioned on the disc and it had a small sample of the first chapter. But I've never actually covered the book itself. So this week when I was looking for some fantasy, that sprung off my shelf and I thought I'd cover it, or add it to the poll and see if you want me to cover it. So let's see how that poll does. But as always, thank you very, very much for watching. Please like, subscribe and comment below, as it does do me massive favours with the YouTube algorithm. It really does, it helps me out a lot. So if you can do that, be really appreciated. But most of all, as always, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.